Her voice cut through the silence before I had even turned my head. Low, deliberate, almost hesitant, like she wasn't sure she should have said it out loud at all. And suddenly, I was aware of everything. The way her perfume seemed to settle in the air between us, faint but impossible to ignore. The way the lamplight traced the line of her neck. The sound of her ring tapping once against the rim of her glass, as if to cover for the words she'd just released. She sat across from me, and yet it felt like she was too close. Or maybe I was too close. I had noticed her long before this night. The way she carried herself, poised, steady, like she had already lived through storms I couldn't name. She wasn't a woman who needed attention, but the room tilted a little when she walked into it. And me? I was 20-something, all nerves and restless energy. I told myself I was just being polite when I lingered in her conversations, but it wasn't politeness that kept me there. It was something else. Something heavier. She always spoke to me with that measured calm, her words carefully chosen, while mine tumbled out too quickly, too eager, betraying the fact that I hadn't learned how to disguise my interest. That night, everything narrowed down to the space between our hands on the table. Her fingers rested lightly near mine, not touching, but close enough that I could feel their heat. I caught myself staring, at the curve of her knuckles, at the way she absent-mindedly traced the edge of her glass. She noticed, of course she noticed. She always noticed. When her eyes lifted to meet mine, I forgot the sentence I'd been trying to form. She didn't look away. Her gaze held, steady, patient, like she was waiting for me to do something I wasn't ready for. And then came those words. "You don't know how long I've waited." I froze. Not because I didn't want to answer, but because every part of me was suddenly too aware, of my breath, of the blood rushing in my ears, of the fact that if I said the wrong thing, I might lose the fragile thread hanging between us. She leaned back slightly, almost like she regretted saying it, her lips pressing together as if she could take it back. The confidence she usually wore had cracked just enough for me to glimpse something else underneath, hesitation, maybe even fear. I wanted to reach across that small space, to close the distance. My hand shifted, just a fraction, brushing against hers. It wasn't planned. It wasn't bold. Just a small, clumsy movement, but her fingers stilled, and for a second, neither of us pulled away. The air felt too heavy for such a quiet room. The clock ticked somewhere in the background, a metronome to the silence stretching between us. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words tangled before they could escape. She tilted her head, studying me with that half-smile that wasn't really a smile, more like a question. A test. And just as I gathered the courage to answer her, the door creaked open. The sound snapped both of us back. She drew her hand away, her posture sharpening, her eyes flicking toward the doorway. I sat there, heart hammering, her words still echoing in my head. "You don't know how long I've waited." And I realized, she was right. I didn't. The door shut again, quietly. Whoever had opened it must have thought better of stepping inside. But the spell had already shifted. She straightened, smoothing the sleeve of her blouse, as if she could fold the moment back into order. I tried not to stare, but every move she made seemed to pull me deeper. We stayed silent longer than was natural. My coffee had gone cold. Her glass remained untouched. Finally, she said, almost to herself, "You remind me of someone I used to know." I should have let it pass. I should have nodded, or smiled politely. But instead I asked, "Someone important?" Her lips parted, then pressed together again. She took a slow breath before answering. "Someone who wanted too much from me. Or maybe I wanted too much from him. It's hard to say anymore." The weight in her tone was different than her usual calm. It was worn, almost tired. And I realized then, she wasn't untouchable. she wasn't unshakable. She was carrying pieces of something broken, something she didn't let anyone else see. That admission pulled me in closer than I intended. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, studying her in the dim light. "I don't think you want too much," I said, though my voice betrayed more than I meant. Her eyes narrowed, not unkindly, but as if testing whether I even understood what I'd just said. "You're young," she replied, softer now. "That's not an insult. It's just, youth makes promises it doesn't know how to keep." The words should have stung, but they didn't. They only made me more restless, more certain I wanted to prove her wrong. I tried to hide it, but my gaze kept betraying me. The faint lines at the corners of her eyes when she glanced away. The way her hair slipped forward, catching against her collarbone. The subtle perfume she wore, not sweet, but warm, grounding. She noticed. Of course she noticed. She always did. When she reached past me for her glass, her hand grazed my shoulder, casual, nothing deliberate. But she lingered a fraction too long. I felt the heat of it through my shirt, and every muscle in me locked in place. And then she pulled back, just as quickly, as if she'd realized she had let herself slip. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she murmured, eyes fixed on the rim of her glass. I swallowed, not sure if she meant to warn me or herself. "I don't know how else to look at you," I admitted. That silence came again, heavy, thick, but not empty. I thought she would end it, stand, leave. But she didn't. She stayed there, so close I could feel her presence without either of us moving another inch. Her hand shifted again, this time on purpose. She rested it lightly over mine. Not gripping. Not demanding. Just enough to silence whatever words might have followed. The moment stretched, fragile and dangerous. And yet I didn't pull away. Neither did she. The pressure of her hand over mine still lingered when her phone lit up on the table. The vibration startled both of us. She pulled away too quickly, the sudden absence almost louder than the sound itself. Her eyes darted to the screen. A name I didn't recognize flashed across it before she turned the phone face down. "Sorry," she said, though her voice carried more weight than an apology for a text. I wanted to ask who it was. I didn't. Instead, I sat frozen, pulse thudding in my throat, the space between us charged and unsettled. She leaned back, but only slightly, as though torn between escape and surrender. "This can't," she began, then stopped. "Can't what?" My voice was quieter than I meant. Her gaze held mine, and for a moment I thought she would say it. That she'd named the thing neither of us dared to. Instead, she shook her head, eyes lowering to her hands. "You don't understand what people would say." The word stung because I knew she wasn't wrong. The age, the difference, the risk, they weren't things I could erase. But her hesitation only drew me further in, not away. I leaned closer without meaning to. The space between us shrank until I could feel the warmth of her breath against my cheek. My heart pounded in short, sharp bursts, matching the uneven rhythm of hers. Her eyes flicked up, locking with mine, and the world narrowed to that look, all the restraint, all the danger, all the quiet wanting she tried to bury. For a second, I thought she would let me close the distance. But then, the door handle turned. We both jumped. A laugh spilled out from the hallway, voices carrying too near. She straightened instantly, her composure snapping back like a shield. I pulled my hands into my lap, pretending to adjust the sleeve of my jacket. The voices faded again, passing us by, but the damage was done. The air was tighter now, sharper, as if the room itself remembered what had almost happened. She looked at me then, and there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before, not just longing, not just fear, but guilt. And it pressed on me harder than any words could. I whispered before I could stop myself, "Do you want me to leave?" She froze. Her lips parted as if to answer, but no sound came. Her silence told me more than a refusal ever could. I shifted closer again, unable to resist the gravity of her. My knee brushed hers beneath the table. This time, she didn't move away. Her breath caught. I heard it. Felt it. The space between us shrank again, dangerously small. Her hand lifted, almost without thought, brushing the edge of my sleeve. Not a caress, not a claim, just the lightest contact, as though she was testing how far she'd let herself fall. And though no kiss passed between us, the silence that followed was more intimate than one ever could be. We sat there, too close, too still, each of us pretending resistance, while every part of us leaned toward surrender. It was too quiet again. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of every sound your body betrays, the uneven breath, the shift of fabric, the quickened heartbeat that doesn't match the stillness. She sat across from me, but the distance felt thinner than air. I watched her fingers curl around the stem of her glass, then loosen again as though she couldn't decide whether to hold on or let go. Finally, she broke the silence. "You don't realize what you're doing to me." The words slipped out so softly I almost thought I'd imagined them. But the way her gaze avoided mine told me she hadn't meant to say it. I leaned in, my voice low. "Then tell me." Her eyes flicked up, startled, not by the question, but by how close I suddenly was. My knee brushed hers under the table, deliberate this time. She didn't move away. She shook her head, strands of hair falling across her cheek. On instinct, I reached out, brushing them back, my fingers grazing her skin. She inhaled sharply, like the touch had undone something tightly held in place. "You shouldn't," she whispered, though her body leaned almost imperceptibly toward me. "You don't believe that," I said, softer still. The tension broke into confession, not planned, not rehearsed. "Do you think I don't notice?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "The way you look at me. The way you wait for me to say your name. I pretend it doesn't matter, but it does. Too much." Her vulnerability cut through the calm exterior she wore so carefully, and it left me stripped bare too. I swallowed hard, the truth rushing out before I could stop it. "I can't stop thinking about you," I admitted. The words came ragged, urgent. "I don't care how wrong it looks. I don't care what anyone says." I stopped myself, but the damage was done. The silence after was heavier than the words themselves. She closed her eyes briefly, as if my confession was both everything she wanted and everything she feared. When she opened them again, they shimmered with something I'd never seen before. She leaned in, slowly, hesitantly, until her shoulder brushed mine. The warmth of her body beside me was dizzying. I turned toward her, close enough now to hear the soft catch of her breath. Her hand lifted, almost trembling, and pressed lightly against my chest, not to push me away, but to feel the thud of my heartbeat against her palm. "You're too young," she whispered. Yet her voice broke on the words, betraying the war inside her. I lowered my head until my lips hovered just above hers, so close the distance was measured in heartbeats. The smell of her perfume was overwhelming now, mingled with the faint taste of wine in the air between us. Her eyes closed. Mine did too. And then, her lips were right there, so close that the smallest breath could have closed the space. And then the sound broke us apart. A voice in the hallway, her name, spoken carelessly, as if by someone searching. She pulled back so fast it was like I'd burned her. Her chair scraped against the floor. My heart was still hammering, but hers seemed to stop altogether. She pressed a hand to her temple, whispering under her breath, "Not now, not like this." The voice faded again, but the damage was already done. I rose, unable to sit still, pacing a step, then stopping when I saw her expression. "You didn't tell me," I said quietly. Her eyes flicked up, startled. "Tell you what?" "That someone else," my words caught. The name on her phone, the voice in the hall, it all collided in my chest. "That you're not free." She flinched, not at my accusation, but at the truth I'd uncovered too easily. She didn't deny it. For a long moment, the only sound was the tick of the clock. Finally, she exhaled, almost shaking. "It isn't what you think." Her hands gripped the back of the chair, knuckles whitening. "I've been alone for years," she said, her voice tight. "But people still, they assume. They think I belong to someone. And maybe I let them think it." The honesty hit me harder than any confession of betrayal. She wasn't hiding a man. She was hiding her loneliness. "Why?" I asked, softer now. Her laugh was bitter, broken. "Because it's easier to be seen as taken than to be seen as unwanted." The words tore something in me. She stood there, graceful and composed to anyone else, but in this moment, I saw the cracks, the trembling in her hand, the way her shoulders curved as if under a weight no one else noticed. Without thinking, I crossed the room. She tried to step back, but I was faster, reaching out, my hand brushing against hers on the chair. She froze. Not because she didn't want the contact, but because she wanted it too much. "I don't care what they think," I said, voice low near her ear. My breath stirred the hair at her temple. "I only care about you." Her hand slipped from the chair and landed against my chest again, trembling this time. She looked up at me, eyes glassy with something between fear and relief. "You don't know what you're asking," she whispered. "If we do this, it changes everything. I can't go back." Her words should have made me stop. They didn't. They only drew me closer. We stood there, caught in a silence that felt louder than anything we could say. My hand lifted, hesitated, then tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. For the first time, there was no denial left between us. And in that fragile, suspended second, we both knew, the decision had already been made. The silence stretched until I couldn't bear it anymore. Her hand trembled against my chest, and I could feel her heartbeat, not steady, not calm, but racing in time with mine. "Tell me to go," I whispered, close enough that the words brushed her skin. "If that's what you want, I'll walk away." Her eyes flicked to mine, wide, searching, as if she was weighing every consequence in the world. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Instead, her fingers curled lightly against my shirt, holding instead of pushing. That was her answer. I stepped closer, closing the last of the space between us until our bodies almost touched, heat pressing through fabric. My hand slid up her arm, slow, uncertain, testing. When it reached her shoulder, I paused, giving her the chance to pull back. She didn't. She leaned into it, the smallest surrender, but it was enough to undo me. "You shouldn't," she breathed, but the words broke halfway. "You don't believe that," I whispered back. The room felt too small, too heavy with everything unsaid. The scent of her perfume wrapped around me, warm, grounding, and I knew there was no undoing this moment. Her eyes shimmered as she finally spoke, her voice cracking at the edges. "I've spent years convincing myself I don't need this. That it's safer to be alone, to keep my distance. And then you look at me like I'm not invisible anymore." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. "You're not invisible to me. You never were." She exhaled, a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and before either of us could second guess it, she leaned into me. Her forehead rested against mine, her breath mingling with mine, and for a suspended heartbeat we were there, teetering on the edge. Then the decision was made. Her hand rose to the back of my neck, hesitant but steady enough to pull me closer. I met her halfway, my lips brushing against hers, soft at first, as if the kiss might shatter the fragile space we had been protecting. But when she didn't pull away, when she leaned deeper instead, the restraint unraveled. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, unsteady, full of everything we'd been holding back. My hands trembled as they cupped her face, her fingers tightening in my shirt like she was afraid I might vanish if she let go. There was no denying, no pretending anymore. When we finally broke apart, breathless, she didn't look away. She held my gaze, eyes bright with a clarity I hadn't seen before. "This changes everything," she whispered. I nodded, my forehead still resting against hers. "Good. Let it." For the first time, there was no hesitation between us, no shield, no mask. Only the raw, undeniable truth: we had crossed the line. And neither of us wanted to go back. The room felt different after the kiss. Not bigger, not smaller, just lighter. Like all the air we'd been holding back had finally spilled into the open. We stayed close, neither of us rushing to move. Her forehead rested against mine, her hand still curled in my shirt. I could feel her breath, uneven, soft, steadying itself. Finally, she pulled back just enough to see me. Her eyes searched mine with that same guarded look, but there was something else there now, something unhidden. "You'll regret this," she whispered, though her voice didn't carry conviction anymore. I shook my head. "The only thing I'd regret is never letting it happen." She gave the smallest laugh, not the polished one she used around other people, but something quieter, realer. "You don't know what comes with me. The whispers, the judgment, the weight of what people think when they see us together." I reached for her hand, sliding my fingers through hers. "Then let them see. Let them talk." Her fingers tightened around mine. That simple grip felt more binding, more intimate, than anything else we'd shared. "I've spent years convincing myself it was too late," she said, her voice soft, breaking a little at the edges. "That I was too old for second chances." I leaned closer, my thumb brushing the back of her hand. "Maybe it's not a second chance. Maybe it's the right one." We didn't need more words after that. She shifted into me, leaning her head against my chest. My arms wrapped around her, not as a claim, but as if to promise I wasn't letting go. The rhythm of her breathing against me steadied, and for the first time since I'd met her, she didn't seem like she was holding herself apart from the world. I kissed the top of her head, slow and lingering, and she let out a breath that felt like surrender, not to me, but to herself. The doubts were still there. They would always be there. The age difference, the questions, the what-ifs. But sitting there with her pressed against me, her hand woven through mine, I knew none of it mattered as much as the warmth of her choosing to stay. Eventually, she lifted her head, her face only inches from mine. "So what now?" she asked, half teasing, half afraid of the answer. I smiled, brushing my thumb along her cheek. "Now. We don't hide." Her eyes softened. And for the first time, she didn't argue, didn't step back. She simply leaned in again, pressing her lips to mine in a kiss that wasn't frantic, wasn't stolen, just steady, warm, and certain. When we finally parted, she rested her forehead against mine once more, her smile quiet but unshakable. And that was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?